thank you so much. Why don't we stand to our feet and welcome him this morning as he comes to bring the word.
Hello? Hello? Oh, there we go. Power is a wonderful thing. Just love it. Wow, what a joy to be back here. Just love being here. I just finished up 2 weeks in the great nation of Fiji. We've been working there for 20 years. And we just did a leaders conference for a week and finished up our school, Supernatural. Just had a great time, and it's good to be here, though. Love this church. We've had a relationship with David Crone in this church for quite a few years now, and it's always such a joy to be here. I was telling Aaron last night that I've really looked forward to being here today because I wanted to see the people in the context of this church that David Crone so trusted to turn their baby over to. And, David and Crone have such a high level of integrity and character, and I knew they would not turn it over to anyone except those that were made for this. And this couple is made for this. They're made for this. So I'm excited. I'm excited to get to know them a little bit more. Listen, before I go any further, I just wanted to share something with you guys that, let's just say this. Holy Spirit, I just knew you would be here this morning. So would you say that with me? Holy Spirit, I just knew you would be here this morning. Isn't that better than inviting him? Because he said he'd come, so we might as well take his word at it, huh? And just do it. God's looking for partners, He's looking for people who will believe him. I just have this new passion in my heart for believers to become believers. For believers to really believe him. It's, the greatest pleasure of the Lord is to be believed. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. It's time for us as believers to give God the pleasure he deserves, which is to be believed. That everything he says he is, he really is. Everything he says we are, we really are. And the commission he's given us into this world, we can actually do. I woke up early one morning, I was singing that wonderful song. When you walk into the room, everything changes. Yeah, and I love that song. And of course, it's about Jesus coming into the room and the Holy Spirit coming. And when that happens, everything does change. And I was just enjoying that, worshiping the Lord in the early morning time. And the Lord stopped me and he said, "Now I want you to think of this song differently. Because this is what I want my believers to be. That when they walk into a room, everything changes. That we carry such an atmosphere that we walk into a business office, we walk into a grocery store, we walk into our school classrooms, when we walk into the place where we work, there is an atmosphere that changes because we carry something bigger than ourselves. And we're destined for that, but we have to believe it. We have to believe it. That it is who we are, and he is who he says he is. Without faith, it's impossible to believe God. For we must believe that he is, which simply means that he is present and available. Hello? Everything God is, or everywhere God is, everything God is present and available. Let me say that again. Everywhere God is, everything God is present and available. And we carry him, right? And so everything he is present and available for us. We must believe that he is. And he's a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. And that just simply means that, in fact, the word diligently seek means to put a demand on. That we are called to put a demand on. He's waiting for his people to believe him so much that they'll put a demand on him. And that's not arrogance. It's like when you write a check into your bank. It's not arrogance that you expect that check to be for the bank to honor that check, do you? It's your account, right? And so God is saying, I'm waiting for my people to put a demand on me to cause me to respond to them out of the account I have for them. Because I want them, when they walk into a room, everything changes. The sick are healed. The dead are raised. Demons are chased out of the room. I was in Fiji years ago, and I got up to speak in a church of about 6,000 people, and I had everybody stand, and I said, sometimes I think heaven is just waiting for a shout from God's people. And I felt that in my spirit. It's time to just give a shout. And I released them to a shout of praise, and it went on like forever. I didn't expect it. But as I was watching, I could see demonic spirits leaving the room, just scattered, going out like this. And just before that, I'd asked how many people needed healing in the room, and a lot of people raised their hand. And after we did this shout, and I watched these spirits and afflicting spirits run out of the room. And then I said, how many of you that raised your hand have now been healed? Everybody had raised their hand, and healing had just swept through the room with a shout. It's time we just start believing. He is who he said he is. We are who he says we are. And we have a commission in this world. Yeah? Well, I'm done. Thanks. Appreciate that. Yeah. So, since I was here last time, Deb and I published 3 books in the last 3 months of last year. So we were writing fools, and they've really done well. It's just really been a blessing. But let me a couple of them that I've had when I was here before, but I'll just let you know they're back there. These allow us to go into the nations, and so as you invest in purchasing these books, you invest in the nation, so I appreciate that. This is a book we had last time, Declarations That Empower Us. It's 10 declarations we've used at the mission. And I was reading through some of these today. I do sometimes read my own books. And I started reading this one, and I thought, this is Dayspring. So it's called Community Declarations. It's some declarations we did when we were just enforcing community in our church. So I just want to read a few of them that really struck me that this is what this house is all about. That okay? Okay. We declare that we have an inheritance that provides spiritual territory for those in this community and others who will come to enjoy its freedom. That's this house. Yeah. We declare that this is a house of increase where people will come from every direction to have fresh encounters with God. Come on. I'm getting blasted up here. We declare that this is a house where no one is safe from a blessing. Come on. We declare that we are people and a place of his abiding presence. We declare that we are a people and place of God's indulgence. We are a people and a place where his gospel is demonstrated, just not taught. We're a company of worshipers hosting the manifest presence of God. We declare that we are those who believe reading about the book of Acts without living the book of Acts is unthinkable. Oh, I like these. These are you guys. We declare that we are a battleship, not a cruise ship. We are an army, not an audience. Special forces, not spectators. Missionaries, not club members. Come on. We declare that we are infectious instead of innocuous, contagious instead of quarantined, deadly instead of benign, radical lovers and outrageous givers. Oh, you don't like the giving, you know. Which part of that didn't you like? Radical lovers, you like that, huh? I mean, you're doing the sex thing next week, so that's good. Outrageous givers, maybe that was the part, huh? You like being an outrageous giver? Yeah, it's nothing like it. It's nothing like being like the Father in our generosity. All right, and then we declare that we will not be satisfied until our world cries out, those who have turned the world upside down have come here too. That's this church. Yeah. All right. Then decisions that define us. I wrote this in 2007, so it's been around a little while, but I just had a young man call me from Tallahassee, Florida. This was on the other side of the United States from where we live, and he called me and said, Dave, somebody told me I needed to read this book, and I told him I have plenty of books to read. I don't need to read any more books. And then one of my staff members came to me, just a startup church, and one of my staff members came to me and said, you really do need to read this book. And he said, I read it, and it absolutely wrecked my life. And I need you to send me some more copies because I want to give it to every one of my staff members. And so it still has some shelf life to it. And it's Decisions That Define Us, and if you Google it, you'll find churches around the world that are using it. So that's a fun book, and I just brought a few copies of those. In fact, I just brought a few copies of all these. I couldn't get them in my suitcase, but in then when I was here last time, Prisoners of Hope, which is a book written out of the death of our daughter, now 9 years this last week. It's our anniversary, and she was 31 years old. 2 children, little children. Her children are now 13 and 10, and I get to see them this week. They're coming from Alabama to be with us for a couple of weeks. But it's not a sad book, it's a glad book. It really is the whole adventure of learning the value of hope in what seems like a hopeless situation. And it's been just tremendous for people, especially who have gone through tragedies, but also for just people who want to live in a different context in life, in the context of hope, in a world that can attack your hope pretty strongly. And so that's available back there. And then the last 3 months of last year, we published 3 new books. Deb and I did them together. This is called 21 Days of Hope, A Daily Encounter, which is based on our other book, but it's 21 days of going through and absorbing the whole idea of hope and living in hope for 21 days so that at the end of that time, you totally shift your thinking. Your go-to is no longer the problems of the world, but now it's the hope that comes in Jesus Christ. And we did this the first 21 days of this year as a church, and it was really fun. And I sent out a little video every day to people for about 3-minute video that went along with it, and it's pretty cool. If you do get the book and you want to see the videos, you can contact me, and I'll send those to you too. They're kind of fun. Still there? Do you mind if I share this? I believe in these things. I wouldn't tell if I don't. I believe in the message. This is probably one of my most fun books that I've ever written. I'm a storyteller, and I love to read historical novels. I love to read biographies of people who've done great things in the world. And so I did 10 stories. I call it Heroes of Hope, a collection of inspirational stories. And it's 10 different people in history, real-life people in history, from the Bible and from present day, who have demonstrated a high level of hope, either gone through very difficult times and stayed hopeful in those times, or inspired the hope in others. So there's some historical figures that you would know, some new ones probably, because some of them are historical figures from the United States. Biblical, I would hope that you would know. But they're kind of give you a little bit of a backstory that you might not necessarily know about these people. How many of you ever heard of the great singer? His name just went out of my head. Andrea Bocelli. Andrea Bocelli has this fantastic voice. You know, he's a blind singer, blind almost since birth, but actually not since birth. He was born with some impediments in his eyes, and then got worse and worse, and went totally blind. His mother knew he was going to go totally blind. The story is really about his mother. His mother was told by the doctors when she was carrying him in his womb, "You need to abort this child." She refused to abort him, and we thank God that she didn't. She's a very strong woman of faith, and the backstory of that is really quite interesting. So these are all written kind of like that. It's the people who inspired the people that you know. So Schindler's List, I write about the guy who actually inspired Schindler to be the man that he became. And he was a man that was not the man he ended up being. But there was a man in his life that inspired him, and that's what the story is. So it's just really fun. I love it. I love it. And I don't reveal who it is I'm talking about at the first part of the story, too, so I leave a little mystery there. Yeah. If you're smart enough, you can figure it out quickly. So this is my wife's favorite book. She helped me write it. It's called Journey. It's a hope journal, and it's just a journal. It has a lot of blank pages, so it's kind of a book that would work very well as what every man knows about women. But it does have, on every page, it has a hope quote that comes out of either one of my hope books or from Deborah. And people are just getting so inspired by these. They take out one every day. And it's designed so you can draw on it, you can doodle on it, you can journal on it, anything you want to. But each day you come across the hope quote that is really good. So I want to read one from my wife. She's the brilliant one in the house. "A pearl is evidence that beauty can outlast pain. Choosing hope makes that a reality in my life. A pearl is evidence that beauty can outlast pain." It's pretty cool, huh? She's amazing, my wife. I wish she was here. "Choosing hope enables me to leave behind those things that would not benefit my future." Good stuff. And it's just a journal, but people love it. So anyway, those resources help us get to the nations. So thank you very, very much. Are you still with me? Yeah. All right. I mean, I could preach off of these books, I could do that, but I won't. All right, let's go to James chapter 5. I had an interesting night last night. I had felt like I knew where I wanted to go today and was very excited about it. And I woke up about 1:30 this morning, and just the last couple days before leaving Fiji, I contacted some bronchial infection. So I had the chills and a little bit of fever last night, and I just couldn't go back to sleep. So when I don't know about you, but when I'm in those kind of places where I can't go back to sleep, I just said, "Okay, Lord, if this is you, then you want to talk to me, okay, I'm here. But otherwise, man, I'd sure like to get some sleep." And have you ever had that time where you knew God was waking you up, but then he was silent? Doesn't that frustrate you? Does me. So I'm there, I'm thinking, okay, God, I'm not going back to sleep, so what do you want? And I think sometimes he just waits for you to ask the right question. So I said, okay, is this about tomorrow morning? And do you want me to change what I'm saying? What? I'll do anything because I want to deliver the word that the Lord has for your house. And he directed me in a different direction. I didn't want to go there. So it was a really long night. But thanks for asking. So I'm going to go where he wanted me to go, and we'll just see what that does. So if it doesn't work very well, it's God's fault. Okay? So turn to somebody and say, God's at stake here this morning. All right. James chapter 5, verse 7. "Therefore be patient, brethren, until the coming of the Lord. See how the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth, waiting patiently for it until it receives the early and latter rain. You also be patient, establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is at hand." James is reminding us in this passage that it's important to be aware of the coming of the Lord, the second coming of Jesus. And he says you need to be patient and establish your heart because the chaos of this world will try to overwhelm you, and it's important to keep this uppermost in your mind. Now, it's a very important topic. It's not what I'm going to talk on this morning. So let me just start with this. Let me start with this question. Have you ever felt stuck? Yeah. You know, like your dreams just start getting nowhere. Your finances are getting nowhere. They're just flatlined. Your progress, even in your spiritual life, just seems to be level, and you're not making, you're not moving forward. There's relationships that aren't going anywhere, and you just, areas, it may not be in all of your life, but in areas of your life, you just kind of feel stuck. Anybody? Yeah. Well, I have good news for you. You're not stuck. It's actually worse than that. Because if you feel stuck, see, it's really not possible to be stuck in life. You're either moving forward or you're moving backwards, or you're going in circles. And so, but it just feels like you're stuck. Right, so we'll call it that this morning, all right? And, when you are retreating or wandering around and not going anywhere, it feels like you're just not making any progress. And James, in this passage, James gives us a clue on how to get unstuck. That's what I want to talk about this morning. He says, be patient. Patience is active, it's not static. It's not simply waiting for time to go by. It is actually positioning ourselves for sustainable movement forward. It's just not passive. But I'm not talking about that this morning either, because I don't have the patience for it. But I want to talk about this three words here: establish your heart, because I think this is really key for us. And obviously God thinks it is for you too, so because he had me move this direction. Establish your heart. So 3 questions very quickly. Why is establishing the heart the answer to getting unstuck? It's because we're most likely stuck because we have not established our heart. Brilliant, isn't it? Yeah, you still with me? Second question, why is it important to start with the heart? Proverbs tells us that guard your heart, for it determines the course of your life. Everything in life comes out of our heart. All the issues of life are centered in our heart and comes out of our heart. And so we start with where all the issues of life come from, the heart, because where it goes, we go. Third question, what does it mean to establish the heart? Well, that's an interesting question. We're going to deal with that mostly this morning. The word establish is actually the Greek word sterizo, and it's a great word because it literally means to turn resolutely in a direction. To turn resolutely in a direction. It's the word that describes Jesus when he says he was setting his face to go to Jerusalem. It's the same word. He was setting his face. He was turning resolutely in the direction of Jerusalem. It's that having determined something and you move in that direction. So a few years ago, my 2 oldest granddaughters, who are now 23 and 20, they were teenagers at the time, and they called me and said, "Papa, we want to take you to a movie tonight. They're having a midnight showing of a movie that comes out tomorrow. We want you to go." And I'm thinking, a midnight showing? That does not sound exciting. But my granddaughters asked me to go, so I'm going. So we get to this midnight showing, and there was a line around the theater that went forever. They hadn't let anybody in yet, and this line is just huge. It goes all the way around this big building. And I got out of the car, and I looked at that line. I hate lines. I absolutely hate lines. I counted one time on one of my trips how many lines I stood in. I stood in 53 lines because I'd gone to China, back home, and then 6 hours later flew off to Fiji. And I'd gone through 53 lines. I hate them. I'll do anything I can do to not have to stand in a line. So I'm looking at that line, I'm thinking, I'm not standing in this line. So I said to my granddaughters, I turned resolutely in a direction. I said to my granddaughters, follow me. I went all the way to the front of the line, and there was a man standing there, a young man standing there, hadn't let anybody in. I said to him, where do you buy a ticket to get into this movie? And he said, oh, sir, it's right inside there. I said, thank you. Gals, come on. I walked right in. I took my granddaughters with me. We walked up bought a ticket, and they haven't even let anybody in the theater yet. I went up, bought a ticket inside, bought my popcorn and my Coke, went and sat down in the theater. We were the only ones in there. My granddaughters, their eyes are about this big, said, "Pop, how do you do that?" I said, I turned my eyes resolutely in a direction. But that's what that looks like. It's like you resolve all the issues. You're just going to move in this direction because this is the direction you want to go. And when you do that, it's interesting how people get out of your way. It's also interesting how circumstances will get out of your way. But part of our problem is we're not resolutely turned in a direction. Hello? Getting really quiet. Most of our stuckness comes from indecision, from not resolving the issues. Is this the right direction? I don't know. Maybe it is. It could be. Maybe it is. Is this God's will? Is it not God's will? Is it me or is it God? How many of you ask that question? Is it me or is it God? And we get stuck in all of these unresolved questions. Is it the right timing? Is it the wrong timing? What's the perfect will of God? What's the permissible will of God? We do this whole thing, and all it does is cause us to be stuck. It doesn't move us anywhere. And I think sometimes God is just simply saying, just make a choice. Would you just choose something? Move in a direction. James talks about a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways, and that's what that is. It's a man sitting or a woman sitting on the fence, caught between two opinions. That's what double-minded means. I was, years ago, my daughter was about 13 years old, and we were getting ready to go to Hawaii for a vacation. It was really, really hot in California. In fact, by the way, today in California where we live, it's supposed to be 42 degrees Celsius. So I'm thankful to be here. But it was one of those summers, and it was really hot, and it had been hot for several days. And I needed to get some short pants, buy some short pants, and so we went to Walmart, and Deb picks out all my clothes because I'm colorblind, so she does all of that, and we went to the store, and we go into the men's department, and Deb pulls out a pair of short pants, said, "Here, try this on." So I go into the dressing room, and I put them on. I walk back out, and again, it's so cool, so refreshing in Walmart, because it was so hot outside. And I was so excited about going to Hawaii. And Deb said, "Oh, here's another pair. I'd like you to try these on." My daughter was standing there with her. "Why don't you try these on?" And I don't know if it was the heat, coming out of the heat into that cool air or what it was, but I took that pair of pants, and I unbuttoned my pants. I'm standing in the middle of Walmart. Unbuttoned my pants, unzipped them, dropped them down to my knees, and then looked up. And I saw my daughter with her eyes about this big, and my wife with her mouth wide open, and I froze. I didn't know what to do. Do I pull them back up? Do I drop them to the floor and put the other ones on? Do I run back to the room as quick as I can? I didn't know what to do. I froze. I couldn't move. And my wife just staring at me. And then looking at their faces, I started giggling. I started laughing so hard I couldn't even stand up. And I'm falling on the floor with my pants down to my knees. I couldn't move resolutely in a direction. I couldn't do it. That's what that looks like. And sometimes we wait so long to make a decision, we lose the opportunity, the window of opportunity, right? The opportunity of a lifetime must be taken hold of in the lifetime of the opportunity, because every opportunity has a lifetime. But we have to move resolutely. Did I buy the pants? Yes, I bought the pants. Yes, thank you. And I eventually got back into the room. I woke up early one morning. This was about 4 or 5 years ago now. And I heard the Lord say, "I'm bored with your faith." I said, "This is going to be a good day." He said, "I'm bored with your faith." I said, and we have done so many things on faith. I don't know how we've survived, but we just have. God's been amazingly faithful. And we built a $3.8 million building, debt-free. We didn't borrow any money. When we were in total debt, $4 million in debt on the other facility. Couldn't hardly make our payments, but God said, I want you to do it, and I'll show you how to do it. And He showed us how to do it and built it without borrowing one dime. And we'd done all of that kind of stuff, and I thought, God, I've pushed all my chips to the middle of the table. Man, I've bet on you. And He said, no. He said, there's more. And I said, well, what do you want me to do? He says, I don't care. I just want you to do something that pushes me, that tests me, that causes me to respond in an unreasonable way toward you, because I am unreasonable. And I want to require something of you that's unreasonable so that I can do unreasonable things for you. But I need you to move. I said, well, what if I choose the wrong direction? He says, you already have. This was a rough day. So I went on a little adventure with the Holy Spirit that morning and believed that God was calling us to do something financial as a church, and it was in a time when people were losing their homes. It was a very difficult time for the congregation. They were losing homes. They were in their debts. You know, it was just a tough time. People were losing their jobs. And so I went to our staff and I said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do this. It took them a while, but finally they agreed, and we started raising funds for establishing our facility, renovating our facility, which is 100,000 square feet. It's a big building. It's got had a lot of damage over the years. And over the next 5 years, and I'll just tell you real short of it, and when we did that, when we made a move, and he said, I don't care what you do, just do something. When we moved, it broke the back of lack that we'd been carrying for 13 to 15 years. It broke the back of it. And since that time, we have lived in a whole new economy within our church. You know, sometimes you just have to move. So say move. Oh, you can do better than that. Come on, say move. I just like making you say it. See, staying where we are is not an option in the kingdom of God. It's just not an option, no matter where we are in our life. And again, I had risked a lot of things, but God was saying, oh, you know, I just think I want to push you more because I'm an unreasonable God, and I want to give you an unreasonable offer so that I can do unreasonable things for you when you respond unreasonably. And He does that. So what does it mean to turn resolutely in a direction? I'm just going to say a few things more here, and hope this is valuable to you. Well, it means to set your heart on the chosen or promised outcome. To set your heart on the chosen or promised outcome. You know, Joshua took the nation of Israel into the promised land, and after they had conquered a large portion of it and settled in a large portion of it, he gathered into the book. He gathers all of his people around. He gathers the people of Israel and all of his leaders. And he says, listen, we have some choices to make. You can choose to serve God, or you can choose to serve the gods of the people around us. But then what does he say? As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. What was he doing? He was turning resolutely to a chosen outcome. He said, this is how my family's going to live. This is how we're going to go after life, is we're going to serve God, and my family is going, my children are going to serve God. This is the outcome that I want. Therefore, I am making this direction. I'm setting my heart in this direction, and I'm not moving from this direction. As you do whatever you want to as a nation, you'll make choices. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And when he did that, he removed the distractions and the contrary influence. Setting your heart on chosen outcomes resolves the issues of other choices and quiets the distractive voices. I was going to Bible college, and Deb and I were married. We lived in a little tiny, it was a literal shack next to my father-in-law and mother-in-law's business on the coast of California. and I was working for them while I was going to Bible college. And I was enjoying the work, but I knew that wasn't what I wanted to go after. But my father-in-law was watching me work, and this is over a period of about 6-8 months. And it was a very successful business. It was, what would you call it? Commercial fishing gear. And he supplied fishing gear all up and down the west coast of the United States. And it had made them millionaires. And he said one day, I want to take you out to lunch. I want to talk to you. And so he takes me to lunch. And as I'm sitting there, he said, David, I've watched you, and I've watched the way you deal with people, and I've watched your character. I've watched how you've worked with us, and I want to give you the business. Now, you have to understand where I was in life at that time. I didn't know if I'd ever have a job in the church. I didn't know if, we were living in this little tiny, it was actual shack that we had glued together to live in. Going to school, hardly any money whatsoever. We had no idea what the future looked like. And here he was offering me the future. Everything you could imagine. The finances needed, a job that could last for a long time. I could build a business. And it was all handed to me in that moment. But there was no question. I said to him, Dad, I really appreciate this. But when I was 16, kneeling by a chair like down on an aisle like this in Lake Tahoe, California, and I heard the Lord say, David, I want you to preach my word. I said yes. And I set my heart in that direction. And it's never changed, Dad, so I can't take your offer. You see, it didn't matter what he offered because I had resolutely turned in a direction. You see what I'm saying? It eliminates all the options. It turns away the distractions that want to take us in all different kinds of directions. We've already resolved the issues. And I don't foster any fact that doesn't align with the truth of my calling. When we set our heart on the promised or chosen outcome, we refuse anything that doesn't speak to its fulfillment. Life will just try to absolutely jack you around. Do you understand what I'm saying? It just tries to turn you inside out and move you around and flip you over. And I used to love, I still do love to body surf. And sometimes you don't catch that wave quite right, and it flips you upside down, turns you inside out, and you think you're swimming to the surface, and you're actually swimming to the bottom. I mean, it just jacks you around. Life tries to do that to you, and unless you have set your heart in a direction, it will destroy you. It will lead you on paths you never wanted to walk on. But once you have turned resolutely in a direction, it doesn't allow life to do that to you. Turning resolutely defeats compromise. Nehemiah, came to build the wall. And he set his heart on that. And Sanballat and Tobias were just two people who just wanted to destroy. They were afraid of what Nehemiah was doing. He's building on the wall, and they tried everything. They tried intimidation, accusation, tried everything. And so now they decide to try compromise. So they come to Nehemiah while he's working on the wall and say, why don't you come on down? Let's just talk this over. And Nehemiah said, why should I come off the wall? I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Why should I come down and talk to you? See, that's what it does for us. Some of us get so caught up in the circumstances of our life because we've just been indecisive. We haven't just moved in the direction that we need to set our heart on. So that's important for us, to set our heart on a chosen or promised outcome. The second thing is to live according to your final certainty. Steve Jobs says your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Let me talk to these people back here. Steve Jobs said, time is limited, so don't waste it living somebody else's life. Live according to your destiny, not somebody else's. If His promises are yes and amen, then we need to live like they are. Do you understand what I'm saying? 2 Corinthians 1:20, all the promises of God in Him are yes, and in Him amen, to the glory of God through us. The word yes, it simply means it's on the table. It's available. Everywhere God is, everything God is present and available. This is His word to us. He's not saying yes, but meaning no. And amen is simply His oath. Amen is a remarkable word. It's said that it's the best known word in human speech. When you say amen to His yes, you're coming into agreement with His word, but it's more than agreement. And this is important. It's more than agreement. It means to make the substance of what is promised our own. It goes beyond agreement to appropriation. So when God is saying, I am offering this to you, and He's saying yes to this, and when we say amen, we're taking hold of that and we're appropriating it for ourselves. So what does that look like? David and Goliath. You know, David came to the battlefield on that day. And for 40 days, the nation of Israel had been intimidated by the giant Goliath. For 40 days. And David has been anointed king, but he's not king, right? Saul is still king, but Saul is not acting like a king. So David comes on there. He hears what's available to those who defeat Goliath, and he says, is there not a cause? And David steps onto the field and becomes a king on that day. David was anointed king. When he steps on the field, he's living according to what his prophecy said he would be. And on that day, he stepped into his destiny. On that day, he was no longer David the shepherd boy, but he was the one. Saul has killed his 1,000, David has killed his 10,000. When we live resolutely in a direction, we step into our destiny. See, I believe in destiny. That's not fate. That's being everything God created you to be and doing everything God created you to do. It's living that way, and that we can do that, but we have to live with that sense that we are living the final outcome of our life. David was already living that, even though he had not received the crown yet. And Joseph had this amazing dream. He was going to be a man of authority. He was going to be a man that would take over. He would rule. He was a man of ruling. But it took 17 years before he got there. But he lived all of his life, whether he was a slave or whether he was in Potiphar's house or whether he was in prison. He lived as though he already was that person. Do you get that? When we resolutely move in a direction, we are moving towards our destiny. And we may not be that total person yet, but we're living now as if we are. See, how many of your prophetic words still haven't been fulfilled? That's all? I've got my hand up, man. I still have some. You say, is that really me? Is that prophetic word really me? Yes, it's really you. You may not look like it right now, but if you'll move resolutely in that direction, you will become that. There's the law of inevitability, which simply says this: you are becoming what you will be. Right? So right now, if you eat 100 calories more a day than you burn, what's going to happen to you in 5 years? You're going to weigh a lot more, aren't you? That's the law of an inevitability. If we buy into the prophetic word that God has over our life, if we really believe it, if we set our heart resolutely towards that direction and we start living that way, we will become that word. We will become that word. We need to move really from if to because. I was writing with a friend of mine in South Africa, and Deb and I and he and his wife were driving on this amazing coast down at Cape Town, and we were talking about our prophetic words, and we kept using the language, if this is true, then we need to do this, this, or this. And I realized we were defeating ourselves with our language. We were saying, if this is true, we were actually hedging our bets, right? So we're saying, if this is true. And it suddenly struck me, and I said to the guy, those of us in the car, I said, listen, guys, we need to change our language. It's not if we have already declared that this is the Word of God, then we need to start talking like, because this is true, then I will then act this way. I will then move in this direction. I will set my heart on that direction, and I will start living now as if it's already happening. Are you getting this? So we've had this word over our house. We have, I was telling Aaron last night, we have a very large building. It seats 2,500 people. I don't know what that is in the metric system. We have 100,000 square feet, and I don't know what that is in the metric system of building. But we don't have a large congregation. But we have a very large footprint in the world. We have tremendous influence all over the world, and that's thanks to a lot of people who have been willing to step out and do unreasonable things. But when we were building that building, the sanctuary, we had prophets come through and say, it's not big enough. When we moved in, we thought, yeah, it's probably going to be true. And then we just had interesting times. And we didn't hear that word for a long time. I mean, we're 500 people in a building that seats 2,500, so it's like BBs in a box. And then about a year ago, Bobby Con, you have had Bobby here, right? Bobby Connors. Isn't he crazy? We love Bobby. Love him. He came in and he was speaking one day, and he just stopped me and said, listen, by the way, this place isn't big enough. I'm thinking, man, I've heard that before. You understand what I'm saying? So I'm a great man of faith, right? So I've heard that before. So at the break time, I asked him, I said, Bobby, I heard you say that. Are you just talking? Because he was talking about the move of God he was seeing come into the United States, into the world. And I thought maybe he was just referring to most places aren't big enough. So I said, are you talking about in general, or are you talking about this sanctuary? I said, I'm talking about this sanctuary. It's not big enough for what's coming. I thought, man, it's been a long time since I heard that. He came back about 8, 9, 10 months later, and he was speaking again. And he said it again. He said, this place isn't big enough. It hit me differently this time. Because in between that, another prophet had come through and said the same thing. And they're looking at 500 people in a 2,500-seat auditorium. And this time when he said it, it hit me totally different. It hit me at a very visceral level, a very emotional level. And I sat in the chair right there, and I just wept. And I thought, why am I responding this way? The Lord spoke to me, and he said, Dave, you have danced around this word for 15 years. You've been willing to dance with this word, but not take it home to meet your mom and dad. Do you get the picture? You've danced around this word, but you're not willing to marry it. You haven't fully embraced this word. I hadn't set my heart on that word. What you don't fully embrace, you trivialize. And what you trivialize, you never fully possess. Do you hear me? I hope this hits your heart. Because everyone in this room has things you've trivialized. You've allowed them to sit off to the side because you weren't sure, could that really possibly be true? And that day, I said, God, I will no longer trivialize this word. I'm not only going to dance with this word, I'm going to embrace it fully. I'm going to make love to this word. And I fully embrace it. And we are strategizing what it looks like when we don't have enough room in the house. Because the word wasn't, it's going to be full. It said it's not big enough. So we all can fall easily prey to that. But listen, here's what it takes. It takes faith. And it comes back to what I was talking about at the very beginning this morning. And that's simply this. We got to start believing. If we're going to call ourselves believers, we got to start believing. Believing He is who He said He is, that we are who He says we are, and that we have a place in this world to shock our world, to impact our world, to walk into a room and the dead rise. Yeah? You know, we went after resurrection with our daughter. This church at that time, and some of you may have been here, I know that David presented it to your church. We were going after it on that weekend, and you guys prayed for that with us. I mean, I could tell you the story. It's an amazing story, but we didn't get it. But since that time, we've had 5 resurrections. One of them are in our school in the Philippines. I was there at the last, I just was able to get there for the graduation time of our school, the last class, and I was there, and you know, in that culture, time really doesn't mean a whole lot, so everybody comes a little late, you know. And I've gotten used to it, so I was sitting there, and I started teaching. This one guy, he was really late, he walks in and comes and he sits down next to me. And I said, "Hi, where have you been?" He said, "I went to the hospital. My uncle was sick. My aunt has been trying to get me to pray for my uncle for a long time, and then all of a sudden he got really sick and went into the hospital, so I went by to pray for him. And when I got there, he'd been dead for an hour. And the family was all there crying. They were weeping. They were waiting for the mortuary to come and take the body." He said, "So I stood in the room and I just began to declare silently over his body life like you've taught us." I said, "Yeah?" He said, "Well, I stood there for 2 hours. That's why I was late. I thought the story was getting out. Yeah, we didn't get it, but, you know, we prayed." I said, "Yeah?" He said, "Well, at the end of those 2 hours, his eyes started to blink, started to lick his mouth, his tongue, woke up, started talking to everybody, and he's alive." I said, "Wait. And this guy's just like, "Yeah." I said, "Well, you graduate, buddy. You graduate. I don't care how late you are, you graduate." That's what we're supposed to be. But we have to set our heart resolutely in that direction, that we are world changers. But if we're going to be world changers, we have to give up our excuses. We have to give up our excuses because none of them matter. None of them matter. Moses made every excuse in the book. It's my heritage. It's, you know, I'm a Hebrew in an Egyptian world, and Jews are slaves. Esther said, "I'm just a woman in a world where a woman doesn't count." Right? Gideon said, "You don't understand the culture I've lived in for 7 years. We only know defeat. We don't know victory. We don't know how to respond to victory." None of those excuses matter. It just doesn't matter. Because it's not who we're called. We are called to be world changers. We are called to take on our world and see it changed. But we have to believe it. We have to believe it about God, and we have to believe it about ourselves. And then the next time God asks you some outrageous thing, say yes. Oh, boy. You know, it's time to stop using confusion as an excuse. That hurt, didn't it? How many times we go, "Oh, you know, I just don't know. kind of confused about that. We're not really confused. We're just using it as an excuse. We really know what we're supposed to do. We just don't do it. It's time to establish our heart. Give ourselves wholeheartedly to the destiny that God has for every single person in this room. You can't use the excuse of your age or your lack of experience. You are your perfect age, and your best experience is in front of you. God wanted you to be the age you are in the time that you live in. Otherwise, He wouldn't have formed you in your mother's womb at the time that He formed you. Doesn't matter how that came about. My wife was the result of a rape on a family member, a little 12-year-old girl. It's no accident. So it doesn't matter where you come from, but where you're going. So why don't you stand up? Did God make the right choice this morning? It's okay. I want you to repeat after me. And then I want to pray for some specific areas. Here's what I'm going to ask you to repeat. I will move resolutely in the direction of my promise. I will move with my heart set on the promised outcome. I will live according to the final certainty of my destiny, and I will face my opposition courageously with tenacity and boldness. Okay, that's what you're going to say. And you better mean it, because God's listening. So if you say this, I really do want, don't say it if you don't mean it. That's why I read it to you first. So I'm not trying to be sneaky. But if you say it, it's part of you turning. Nothing happens in the kingdom until something is declared first. So you're going to declare this. Joseph Garlington says, there's something in you that's waiting for you to speak to it. So you're going to speak to something this morning in you. All right, you ready? Okay. I will move resolutely in the direction of my promise. I will move with my heart set on the promised outcome. I will live according to the final certainty of my destiny. And I will face my opposition courageously, with tenacity and boldness. I'm going to add one more thing. And I will believe God is who He says He is. That I am who God says I am. And there is a cause that I was made for. And I will go after it. Come on.